West Palm Beach near the president's resort where he's spending the holiday weekend. Hi, Brian.
Hi, Eric. Well, deal or no deal? That is the question. After yesterday's initial Washington Post report, which said that the incoming Mexican Interior Minister said that there was a new asylum deal in place that would force all immigrants that were seeking asylum in the United States to wait in Mexico for months or years as their asylum cases were processed in U.S. courts. Well, this morning, that same Mexican official, that Interior Minister, is now denying that this plan was in place. The incoming Interior Minister, Olga Sanchez, saying, quote, "There is no agreement of any sort between the incoming Mexican government and the U.S. government." But just hours earlier, Sanchez reportedly said the agreement between newly elected Mexican President Andrés Obrador and President Trump, called Remain in Mexico, was in fact in place. Though nothing was signed and details needed to be finalized, she called the plan a short-term solution. The White House has not confirmed a deal is in place, but late last night, President Trump tweeted this: "Migrants at the southern border will not be allowed into the United States until their claims are individually approved in court. We only will allow those who come into our country legally. Other than that, our very strong policy is catch and detain. No releasing into the U.S. All will stay in Mexico. If for any reason it becomes necessary, we will close our southern border. There is no way that the United States will, after decades of abuse, put up with this costly and dangerous situation anymore." Mexican and U.S. officials reportedly hope a new asylum agreement would act as a deterrent to stop future migrant caravans and effectively end catch and release, in which immigrants are released into the United States as their asylum cases are processed. A policy that critics say, including the president, allows immigrants to cheat the system. Now, Eric, the president has made it clear that he wants to deal with border security right now, perhaps feeling a sense of urgency given the legislative calendar that's left for this year and given the fact that he's going to face a Democrat-controlled House come January. The president is not only threatening to shut down the government come December 7th if he does not receive the $5 billion for his border wall, but now he is talking about shutting down the entire border between Mexico and the United States if this migrant caravan issue is not dealt with soon. Eric?
And the clock is ticking. Thank you, Brian. Arthel?
Fox team coverage continuing now, and for more on the scene at the southern border, let's go to Jeff Paul. He is out west in our West Coast newsroom. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Arthelia. Fox News has just confirmed that a group within the caravan is expected to start marching toward the San Ysidro point of entry at any moment. Organizers say this is a peaceful march, but would likely be the first time U.S. Border Patrol and Mexican officials are tested on how they'd handle the situation. Now, while there are no hard numbers on how many people from the caravan will be involved in the demonstration, they're expecting the group to march from the sports stadium they've been staying at to Chaparral Plaza. Then they could attempt to cross at the point of entry along the border of Tijuana, Mexico, and San Diego, California. At the same time, a group has organized a march of solidarity on the American side of the border to show support. The march comes a day after U.S. Border Patrol and Protection reported that Border Patrol agents in the Yuma sector had rocks thrown at them from an individual who was a part of the migrant caravan.
This caravan and this phenomenon and how it's manifested itself is absolutely unique to anything that we had seen in the past. The mere size of the group of this caravan and the violence that has been perpetuated across two international borders and throughout the country of Mexico is something that we have taken particular note of and that we are absolutely prepared to deal with if it were to occur.
The mayor of Tijuana is calling this a humanitarian crisis, asking non-governmental organizations to help. But with nearly 5,000 migrants from Central America already crammed into that area, it's likely that this situation could only get worse with more migrants on the way. Arthel?
Jeff Paul. Thank you, Jeff. Eric?
And for more on this, Arthel, and what we can expect, Eric Felton joins us, senior writer for the Weekly Standard. So, Eric, it seems the White House and Mexico have agreed for a concept for the Remain in Mexico program, but not the concrete details yet. What do they need to do to actually get this done?
Well, probably what they need to do is try to keep quiet that they're making a negotiation. And this is the kind of thing where if a lot of leaks come out about the negotiation before the deal is done, you allow people to sort of pick it apart and put a lot of pressure. And this is political pressure not only on the U.S. side of the border, but political pressure in Mexico as well. I mean, it's interesting. Think back to 2015. there was a massive migration crisis going on in Europe at the time. Migration in Europe at this point now has been cut by something like 90% from its height just 3 years ago. And that's because there were efforts, not unlike the deal being discussed now, to intercept migrants before they got to Europe. So the main European capitals did deals with Turkey. They did deals with the people in Libya who were transporting all the migrants who were going through Libya. And so the strategy of trying to deal with them before they get here, basically, is what you're saying. Before they get here has been very successful in Europe.
Yeah, but you know, the U.S., we have 15 foreign outposts where customs and immigration is already in another country, from Canada to the Bahamas and Abu Dhabi. Wouldn't this require, let's say, building facilities, manning it with personnel on the other side of the Mexican border to process these people so they actually do not set foot on American soil?
Yeah, and I think what a deal that would be successful that would try to do that would be something that you know, left the Mexican government in charge of dealing with people who are on Mexican soil. I don't think that you're going to be able to get a deal that you know, for political reasons in Mexico, that would have, you know, U.S. Officials on Mexican soil.
Well, they've done that elsewhere. I mean, why wouldn't the Mexicans, if it helps them? Why don't they think that they would go for that?
Well, you know, you do have a lot of bad blood between Mexico and the Trump administration, and I do think that you see some of the consequences of the language that the president has used about Mexico complicating negotiations.
Well, at the same time, they apparently, you know, because the president has sent some troops down to the border, they're trying to quell this in some way. And the fact the Mexican authorities, they would like some of these people to actually stay in Mexico because they need to fill a lot of construction jobs and other jobs that these people could potentially perform.
You know, it is going to be interesting to see what happens with migration to Mexico if it's blocked, if people are blocked from coming to the U.S. Are you going to see more scenes like you've seen in Tijuana, where it's been kind of chaotic and problematic for what is a town that is otherwise a kind of middle-class town in Mexico? Or is it going to be that you know, people from Central America will find ways of being productive citizens or migrants to Mexico?
Yeah, and some Mexicans, natives, I mean, the residents there, they don't want the migrants there. Meanwhile, when the president talks about not allowing them in, I mean, how does he change the law? I mean, because as it stands now under asylum, you present yourself at a port of entry, you ask for asylum, and there is the legal court process for that. I mean, can the president just say, no, you can't come in, that's against the law?
Well, you know, what the law is tricky, because every time the president tries to do something unilaterally, there's a court somewhere which will challenge that ability. And we've seen the president go through this any number of times. So in unilateral action by this administration, you can generally find a court somewhere in the U.S. that's going to rule it unlawful.
Yeah, you know, some group is certainly going to challenge all this. Let me read you something from the American Immigration Council that talks about the rights of people who seek asylum. They write, quote, an asylee is authorized in the United States, may apply for a Social Security card, may request permission to travel overseas, can petition to bring family members to the United States. Asylees may also be eligible for certain benefits, such as Medicaid or refugee medical assistance. After 1 year, an asylee may apply for lawful permanent resident status, wait 4 years to apply for citizenship, and now the backlog is at least 3 years or so, 750,000 people on that waiting list. The average number who are granted asylum, just about 10%.
The president's administration will be able to act very strongly against the rules that are already in place. I think, in terms of the most effective strategy the administration could have would be to use the resources that are being put toward the border, at least the money, to be put toward finding ways of making deals with Honduras, Guatemala, with those governments, which really are in the best position to keep this sort of migration from having to happen.
Yeah, the president has already threatened to cut foreign aid to those nations if they don't act. It continues. Eric Felton of the Weekly Standard. Thank you for joining us today, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
Of course. Arthel.
Eric, we turn now to Capitol Hill. Democrats raising serious concerns about acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker's oversight of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's Russia investigation. California Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff, who is the incoming chair of the House Intelligence Committee, saying Whitaker is not being transparent.
We are going to bring Whitaker before the Congress, assuming he's still in his position at the time when Democrats take over. We may bring him in whether he's in that position or not to find out the answers to these questions.
Garrett Tinney, live in Washington with the latest. Hi, Garrett.
Hey, Arthel, one of the big concerns Democrats have is that when Robert Mueller finishes his investigation, Matt Whitaker could decide to limit how much of that report is released to Congress and the public. But even before that happens, there are a number of other steps Whitaker could take regarding the probe that Democrats are concerned about as well.
And I don't know what steps he has taken, whether he is merely getting briefed now and deliberating on whether he will allow Mueller to subpoena the president, or whether he'll allow Mueller to look into this issue, or whether he's giving Mueller a time certain when Mueller needs to wrap up his investigation. We simply don't know, but I'll tell you this, Dana, we're going to find out.
A number of Republican lawmakers share some of those concerns as well, which is why they are pushing for various pieces of legislation to protect the special counsel. On ABC's This Week, Harvard Law professor Alan Dershowitz said Mueller is very smart and experienced, though, so he likely has been planning and preparing for the possibility that something like a new attorney general could happen.
I think Mueller purposely got all of his work done before the midterms because he wanted to make sure he was finished with all of his work. That's why I think he accepted the written statements. He didn't want the new attorney general or acting attorney general to be able to interfere, and it would be politically a disaster if the new attorney general did that.
Today, a federal judge told former Trump campaign advisor George Papadopoulos that there will be no delay in his prison sentence. Last week, Papadopoulos tried to delay his sentence, citing an ongoing case where a witness is challenging Mueller's appointment. So tomorrow, Papadopoulos will report to federal prison to begin his 2-week sentence for making false statements to the FBI. Arthel?
Garrett Tinney, thank you.
You got it.
Well, a major snowstorm making its way across the country, and it's packing blizzard-like conditions in some places. Heavy snow, strong winds, and rain, make it very difficult for travelers on the road and the skies at the end of this Thanksgiving holiday weekend. We'll have an update on who is in the path of the weather you're looking at there. And have you heard what the latest Iranian President Hassan Rouhani now said? Well, he has a stark warning to us, calling on all Muslim nations to unite against Washington and Israel. Man, he's at it again.
Today, because of one big storm that we have here across parts of the Central Plains, a lot of wind and a lot of snow, and that's going to cause problems from the Denver airport through the Chicago airport, and anything going in or out of that is going to be impacted as well. We had big storms yesterday across the mid-Atlantic, the south very clear, the east coast looking very good, except for this remainder of the storm. That will continue to exit across parts of the Northeast, but it's this storm here in the central part of the country. It's bringing blizzard conditions. Our first blizzard of the year. Places like Kansas City has not seen over 3 inches of rain in a year in over 5 years. In a storm. This storm right here might just do that, be a storm that breaks that record. And with that, we have blizzard conditions, very windy, winds over 35 miles an hour, and that's going to cause blowing conditions. If you're traveling on I-70 today, be very, very careful. In fact, you might want to just wait until tomorrow. By tonight, the storm moves in across parts of Chicago. This is the future radar. Here's overnight tonight. Very heavy snow falling in Chicago. You'll start off as rain, transfer into snow, and then throughout the overnight hours, it moves throughout parts of Michigan. By tomorrow, we see very heavy rain move across the eastern seaboard. Could cause some problems for you as well. But by the time we get towards tomorrow, it's mostly done. Snowfall totals here are going to be somewhere around a foot. We'll see some winters here of a foot of snow, winters, if that's what you call it, right here across parts of the Central Plains. Back to you.
All right, thanks, Rick. Winter is here. Well, meanwhile, in the Middle East, Iran's President Hassan Rouhani, well, he is at it again, attacking Israel and the United States during a conference in Tehran this weekend. He called Israel, quote, a cancerous tumor and a, quote, fake regime that he claims was created by Western powers. You know, Tehran's hostility knows no bounds. It does not cease, despite the Iranian nuclear agreement that supporters hoped would help curb Iran's belligerence. Trey Yanks joins us live with more on this from Jerusalem. Hi, Trey.
Eric, those comments urging Muslim-majority countries around the world to unite against the United States are the latest in a series of verbal attacks launched by Iranian President Hassan Rouhani amid increased pressure on Tehran. Speaking Saturday at the annual Islamic Unity Conference, Rouhani accused the United States of cultivating close relationships with regional Muslim nations to order, protect, and support Israel. The Iranian president calling on Muslims to oppose the United States, saying it would be treason to their religion to agree with America and the West. The Iranian leader even going as far as to call the country of Saudi Arabia a brother and say that Iran is prepared to protect the interest of Saudi's people. Currently, Iran and Saudi Arabia are supporting opposite sides of ground conflicts in both Yemen and Syria. Rouhani's comments come just weeks after the Trump administration reimposed sanctions on the Iranian regime that were removed under the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. In addition to the United States, Israel was a target for Rouhani during his remarks in Tehran on Saturday, where he called the country, quote, cancerous. Take a listen to what the Iranian president had to say.
How was a fake regime called Israel formed in the region, and how the great and historic nation of Palestine was displaced from its home and has been subject to slaughter, plundering, and oppression of the Zionist regime in the region for many years?
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu did respond to those remarks over the weekend from Rouhani, calling Iran a murderous regime. As for the United States, I did speak with a senior Trump administration official last week who indicated that the key issue when it comes to foreign policy and shared interest between Israel and the United States has to do with pushing back against Iranian aggression. Eric?
All right, Trey, thanks so much. Marthel?
Well, Eric, the EU has approved the British Prime Minister's Brexit deal, but will the Parliament follow suit? Plus, as Mexico disputes a reported asylum deal, President Trump is calling on the country to step up its role in protecting the southern border.
All of that vast amount of fighting that you see going on at the border, it's all taking place in Mexico.
A quote, would be very smart if Mexico would stop the caravans long before they get to our southern border, or if originating countries would not let them form. It's a way they get certain people out of their country and dump on the U.S. No longer. Dems created this problem, no crossings. Let's bring in our panel now. Jehmu Greene is here. She's a former candidate for DNC chair, a 2008 campaign advisor for Hillary Clinton, and a Fox News contributor. And Alana Rately, who is the secretary of the Kansas GOP. Welcome to you both.
Good morning, Arthel.
Thank you. Hey, Jehmu. Hey, Alana. Thank you. So, Alana, okay, you know, if this Remain in Mexico plan happens, it could be, you know, considered a win for President Trump. But already you have the Mexican government denying that any deal is done or in the works. I mean, what gives, and what's the next move for President Trump?
I don't think
it's
you know,
surprising.
Discussions from it.
Beg your pardon, it's for Alana. My fault. Go ahead, Alana.
No worries. Yeah, the fact that this is in discussions between Mexico and the U.S., I think is a great starting point. And if this does happen and we can reach some sort of agreement, not only is it a win for Trump, but it's a bigger win for the United States in protecting our border and protecting our citizens. I think this would be the first step in implementing an immigration policy that works. You know, we need to do something to fix the broken system, and that has to start somewhere. And I think this would be, you know, a good use of the relationships that we are building with Mexico, and a good start to the policy.
So, Jehmu, now getting to you, you know, just yesterday, Mexico's incoming interior minister was calling the Remain in Mexico a short-term solution. So now there's a little bit of a, you know, pushback or, you know, denial, if you will. So, Jehmu, I mean, will this plan even get off the ground and without fierce opposition? And also, did the Dems create this problem?
There's a lot there. First, let me say, I don't think it's a good start, Arthel, for the president to say that
the Mexican government is doing one thing and the Mexican government to say the complete opposite. But I doubt that anyone is surprised by that, because we keep having these situations where, whether it's the president of Finland and other world leaders, where we have a president who lies about the conversations that are going on. That being said, let's put that to the side. Is this Democrats' fault? Absolutely not. And trying to frame this discussion in that way is what is so just despicable about how President Trump sows the seeds of division. The United States of America as a whole, from our foreign policy dating back decades, has a lot of responsibility in what is happening in Nicaragua, Honduras, Guatemala, in these countries, El Salvador. The foreign policy that we really broke down these economies and created a lot of the problems that are making these asylum seekers not feel comfortable in their countries and fleeing persecution. And we need to take responsibility for that. I think it's also important to point out that seeking asylum in the U.S., whether you have legal protection or not, is not illegal. Federal law allows for it. International law that we signed on to allows for it. And we need to start this conversation from that place of the American values around seeking asylum and people who are fleeing persecution and violence in their countries. That's where this conversation should start.
Alana, I'm going to get you in there. But Jammu, do you feel, though, there should be some sort of order in terms of how people come to the country?
Of course, absolutely. There needs to be order. There needs to be a process. There is a process. We shouldn't go down the road of criminalizing the asylum process, as this president has done. And he's doing it with the motivation of dividing us, of basically running this 24/7, 365-day-a-year campaign against Democrats. And that's beneath this office. It's beneath our American values. And hopefully we can start to move away from that sort of framing that President Trump has us in, especially as we look at this Thanksgiving holiday weekend and the holidays coming up. I feel for our military servicemen and women who were sent down there on a political mission and missed out on Thanksgiving with their family and friends.
Alana, let me give you a chance to reply.
Yeah, you know, I think what we're doing here is we're not criminalizing asylum. We understand that that is legal, but we want those people to come into ports of entry so that they can get through the process a little more coherently, with better processing. And I think when we let these people in and they come into the country, you know, less than 5%, I've heard, of these people actually go back to their asylum hearings. And this is what is resulting in that problem that we're trying to fix, so that they do come in orderly, that they do come in according to our laws, because absolutely we want immigrants in this country. Republicans will agree on that we want immigrants in this country. We just want them to the process. The way it was designed. And I think that does cause division.
As it stands, you can asylum seekers can cross the border and go to a designated entry. So are you suggesting that there should be some policy change?
Well, I think I wouldn't disagree with some policy change. I think that would make things a lot easier for us in getting those people through the system. You know, and again, if we had a clear system, this would be a good step. You know, having some sort of, you know, staying in Mexico prior to coming to the United States, this would help people who are truly seeking asylum. I think this would motivate them to follow through this process, a clear process to get through, and it might deter people from coming up if they aren't truly seeking asylum, but they simply want a better economic way of life in the United States.
Okay, well, we're going to move on, but we'll see how this topic, you know, runs through the new Congress starting in January 3rd. So let's talk about this week, November 28th. Wednesday, Democrats will privately vote on their leadership. And here is incoming chairman of the House Intel Committee, Adam Schiff, this morning on CNN explaining why Nancy Pelosi... Oh, we don't have that sign. Well, he was on CNN this morning explaining how Nancy Pelosi is the right leader at this time, saying don't walk into what is going to be a agenda chock full for the Democrats and start kind of pulling in someone who doesn't have the experience of Nancy Pelosi. Alana, staying with you, and Jammu, I will give you the last word. Do you agree or disagree with Congressman Schiff?
Well, I agree that if we are trying to promote unity in this country, which I think there are people on both sides that are trying to promote that, I believe that if Pelosi's elected, it's just going to be head-to-head, her against Trump, and there's going to be complete gridlock. You know, there are other people on her side, the problem solvers, bipartisan group on the Democrat side that have, you know, brought this to attention. They're wanting to get things across. They're pointing out that, you know, if Pelosi's elected, you know, some of those people are saying that that's just going to be gridlock. And one other thing that I think if Pelosi is elected, you're really going to turn off some of the new legislators that are coming in that have run on socialist extreme left platforms. They want change, and I don't think they're going to be quieted very easily. And if you bring in same of the old, you know, same old with Nancy Pelosi, I think that's going to continue to be a problem.
Jammu, who should be the next Speaker of the House?
The next Speaker of the House is going to be Nancy Pelosi, is my prediction. And as much as we want to get into the subterfuge of this, I'm looking just straight at the facts. She is the most effective leader we as Democrats have ever had. Democrats, by a 2-to-1 margin, want her to be the next Speaker. And we can all agree, hopefully, that our politics is in a bit of crisis right now. And in this crisis, I, as a Democrat, don't want a novice. I want someone who is an expert, who is going to be able to live up to the mandate that voters made it very clear during the midterm elections, that they want to check on this president and this administration and the policies that are continuing to divide this country and not move us forward. They want to check on the infringement on health care protections that Nancy Pelosi led when she was the last Speaker.
I'm going to have to jump in.
Yes,
Only
Nancy
because...
Pelosi, the next Speaker of the House.
All right, there's that period I was looking for right now, Jammu, as I'm running out of time. I appreciate it. Jammu Green, Alana Rately, thanks to you both very much.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
All right, there. Well, overseas, they have a deal. Tentatively, at least, British Prime Minister Theresa May and leaders of the European Union have reached an agreement setting the terms of the UK's final separation from the EU. The British Parliament, though, has 2 weeks to approve or reject the offer. So what does this all mean? Ellison Barber, standing by in Washington to explain. Hi, Ellison.
Hi, Eric. There's already criticism of this deal. Some Brexit supporters say it is weak and bad for Britain.
We've signed up to a withdrawal agreement that not only will cost us up to £60 billion, not only will keep us tied to European Union rules, yet have no say over how the future ones are made.
EU leaders, including the European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker, are not thrilled with the deal either, but for very different reasons.
I will not say that we are very happy. I think that the feeling of first step of withdrawal of Britain and its reality